Another thing that I'm conflicted on and been trying to get my head around today is the story of Blue Story. This is the film that has been banned by Vue Cinemas after a brawl in Birmingham. They also say there were a couple of other instances of violence around this film as well. It is a violent film, by all accounts. It depicts two characters who are from BAME backgrounds, two black lads, basically, who join gangs, and it breaks out into violence. The maker of the film says that it is more about love, that there's more depth to it than that. But Vue have decided, in light of that brawl and the violence, to ban it. Before we get into this with Van Connor, who's our film man, let's just hear a taste of how Blue Story sounds. This is the trailer.
The latest young person apparently in the wrong place at the wrong time. Last night, she became the 5th person shot dead in the capital this year.
Welcome to London, aka the dungeon. Shootouts and stabbings on like every other junction. Banging for their brother, but they don't even own that. You touch one of theirs, guarantee they can roll back. You read the headlines in the news, but they don't tell you why they go through all, so I'm gonna break it down for sure.
Okay, that's the story. That is the film that is the heart of the story that everybody's talking about right now. Blue Story. Let's try and take stock of this. Equipped ourselves with some of the information that we need to try and make a decision on it. Van Connor is our resident film critic. Van, hi, good morning.
How's it going? Yeah, it's a strange story. It's just dominated the news cycle at the end of this weekend.
It has, hasn't it? It has, and I'm grappling with this one, Van, a little bit, and I'm trying to see it from all angles. In fact, I've got pictures on the screen in front of me here now of this brawl that's happening outside this cinema, in this cinema in Birmingham. A young lad there with a machete, clearly really disturbing. But when you jump to Vue deciding to remove the film from showings around the country, I cannot help but root around to this being about racial prejudice.
To be honest with you, it does feel like that. I mean, there's not really any other way to slice it. This is purely a racial bias. I mean, it's worth noting as well, we would not be talking about this film under any other circumstances had this not happened.
Yeah,
it's not a particularly noteworthy film outside of that. I mean, it is kind of your boilerplate, almost Noel Clarke kind of a pseudo gangster film. You know, we see one of these, you know, every year or so. The same kind of imagined, you know, faux British, we all live in South Central kind of weird urban fantasy thing. The only thing that sets this one apart is the debut of Ratman, who created a bunch of YouTube shorts that he's now spun into a movie, and he himself pops up in the film in that same way that Dave Chappelle did in Robin Hood Men in Tights, where he sort of punctuates the chapter markers, as it were, by breaking the fourth wall.
Right, okay. And if you were saying that they are seeing violence spreading up and incidents, as they describe it, across the country at various different showings of this, Van, did they have a reasonable cause to withdraw it?
If there was a reasonable cause that was directly related to the movie itself, then, you know, presumably yes, but there is none. This is pretty much reactive stuff. I mean, it's worth noting that almost everyone involved in, you know, the alleged violent activity was below the age where they would have been allowed to see the film anyway. Yeah. And allegedly they were there to see Frozen 2.
Yes.
I mean, I've seen Frozen 2. I didn't want to attack anyone.
Yes, exactly. And look, there's the obvious comparisons to be made with, we were talking about Joker earlier on this year, which is a very, very violent film. I went to see Joker around the same time as, literally within an hour, of a man taking a knife to several passers-by at the Arndale in Manchester on the opening weekend of the Joker. Now, the correlation wasn't made between the two of those things. It's probably fair to say, it would probably be unfair to make it. There's no suggestion that there was one. But similarly, there is a film that depicts violence in the rawest sense, but the only difference that I can find, Van, is that it's white people being violent.
No, that's exactly it. That really is it. And if you look at the run-up to Joker, there was a lot of anticipation of, you know, of a dramatic increase in violent activity relating to that film that turned out to be largely unfounded. I mean, in the US, they had armed police monitoring screenings and the premiere and things like that, and nothing ever came. It was all, you know, it was worry for nothing. And now this has happened. It does feel like they were kind of waiting for something. I mean, all right, they got something in this case. But it just happens to have fed into the worst kind of racial prejudices that it could have.
A better comparison is probably Batman, isn't it? Really, if you think about it, the Aurora shooting in I think it was in Aurora, wasn't it? In Colorado, when I can't remember which Batman film it was, and I'm sure you'll fill the gaps, Van. But there was a mass shooting, wasn't there, in one of the screenings of it?
It was to do with The Dark Knight Rises, but the weird part about that was as well, it evidently would pan out to have absolutely nothing with Batman. It was incidental. I mean, this happens all the time, and, you know, in relation to films, and because films, video games, music are very, very easy targets to attribute violent behavior to. And, I mean, there were shootings at an Amy Schumer comedy a few years ago. I mean, I can honestly say no one's ever been inspired to violence by an Amy Schumer comedy. It's just whatever the convenient nearest thing is that you can blame. Okay, in this one instance, it does seem that yes, you can possibly attribute some sort of racial element to it because there was that movie out and it was black teens. But you know, that's a leap because we know they weren't there for that movie.
Yeah, and I don't want to come across all Mary Whitehouse here, Van, because that's a million miles away from where I am. But but then you do watch some of these violent films, and you do listen to some of the violence depicted in popular culture in things like music, and in video games in particular as well. And I can't help but wonder what kind of an impact it is actually having.
Well, this is not a new debate. We've been having this debate really for going on about 4 decades now. This has been going on since the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, you and I presume, are both old enough to remember when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had to change their name because parents were scared that kids would take nunchucks to school and beat each other up. or when Columbine happened and Marilyn Manson got the blame, and whenever anyone did anything and Eminem was the culprit, there was always a convenient scapegoat in media. And okay, in this case, there just happened to be a scapegoat in the next room. But it's worth noting, this all happened in the lobby and outside the cinema. The film itself was in no way directly involved.
Yeah. Also feels deeply unfair for the makers of the film as well, for the actors, the cast, the people involved.
Now, that's actually, I do think that one's been slightly blown out of proportion because, I say we wouldn't be talking about the film otherwise, but it has been doing financially quite well. I mean, Ratman himself popped immediately on Twitter and said, okay, we lost like 80% of our screens within the first day, but we still made it to number 3 in the box office top 10 and made 1.3 million quid. Now, 1.3 million quid for a British film, a British independent film, when you've lost that number of screens, is frankly astonishing. That really is. I mean, to put it into comparison, you could open a Marvel movie and it would make 8 to 9 million quid in its opening weekend in this country. So 1.3 million quid when you're running at 20% capacity is really impressive.
Yeah, so it could very well be the best thing that happened to it then, I suppose, all this publicity, I guess.
Silver lining.
Yeah, quite. Listen, Van, thank you so much for shedding some light on that and making sense of it for us. Always appreciate it. Lovely to chat to you as well, my buddy.
Until the next time, sir.
Van Connor, film critic, for us this morning on Talk Radio. Your thoughts on that as well? Always very welcome.